survive without direct water access. If you need more proof, 14 of the 15 largest cities in the world are within a few dozen miles of the ocean. Perhaps the most obvious attractor for cities is resources. So going back to our isotropic plane, putting natural resources anywhere on this map will draw cities near it. Cities that existed before the last century or so generally sprung up right near the resources, much like Pittsburgh, since they acted as manufacturing and transportation hubs for those resources. But more recently, new resource-dependent cities don't need to be as close to the resources themselves. New transportation technologies can bring the resources from their source. Just look at Dubai. Of course, the UAE has enormous oil deposits, but they're much closer to Abu Dhabi and the southwest than Dubai. In 1900, Dubai had 10,000 residents, less than half that of Carlisle, Pennsylvania, one of the farming towns we talked about at the beginning. That only grew to 40,000 by 1960, but today it's known worldwide and has more than 2.5 million residents. It was able to grow at this enormous rate, even faster than Abu Dhabi, since it cemented itself as the economic and administrative hub for the oil industries of the region. Another geographic feature that we can add to the plane is mountains. Now, mountains don't always have a uniform effect on cities. Mexico City, Bogota, and Addis Ababa are all enormous cities at elevations above 7,000 feet. Mountains do make transport and trade difficult, but they also provide protection. Many ancient cities grew in these locations since they were easy to protect, which left more time to focus on growing the city. But mountains can also hinder development. For quite a while, the United States could not develop west of the Appalachian Mountains. They just served as an enormous barrier. In 1800, the average center of population for the entire United States was here, even though the US had sovereignty over this entire area. Of course, technology eventually conquered this barrier and moved the mean population center all the way out to Missouri today. But if the Appalachian Mountains didn't exist, American history and geography would be completely different. We would have seen urban development much earlier in the Midwest. But mountains can also have another effect. You see, coal, silver, gold, and other mineral deposits are all often located in mountainous regions. And just like Dubai, cities can develop in less hospitable and easy places due to resources. The economic advantage of exploiting the resources overpowers the economic disadvantage of being in an inhospitable location. Denver, Colorado grew 650% between 1870 and 1880 with the opening of a railroad branch connecting with the Transcontinental Railroad. It served as an access point to transportation to the gold miners in the Rockies. So, mountains can either push cities away or bring them nearer. It really just depends on the circumstance. Let's exchange our isotropic plane for a world map. Where should cities be on here? Well, our world's cities are not necessarily in all the most geographically efficient locations. While there is a certain level of natural selection that grows the efficiently placed cities and shrinks the inefficiently placed cities, humans are not always able to put cities in the most efficient locations. Let's put up the 224 cities in the world with a population over 2 million. You can immediately see some patterns. Putting up the equator, you can see there's a clear divide. Only 32 of these cities lie in the southern hemisphere. One might think that this is because there is so much more land in the northern hemisphere, but that's not entirely true. You see, the southern hemisphere still has 32% of the world's land, but only has 14% of the world's large cities. There's clearly a higher density of cities in the northern hemisphere. You can pretty much trace this all back to Europe and Asia. The first large civilizations and empires were on these two continents, even though the human race likely originated in Africa. There's hundreds of different theories on why civilizations succeeded in some places and failed in others. But one of the more plausible and interesting theories is that Europe and Asia succeeded because they're wide instead of tall. The very shape of continents may have changed the course of human history. You see, when a continent is wide, you have a ton of land with roughly the same climate. Climate tends to change when you go north and south rather than east and west, as a nature of how the Earth rotates around the sun. Much of the success of early civilizations had to do with the domestication of plants and animals and the corresponding technology. When expanding horizontally, the climate is similar enough that an empire can use the same successful plants and animals, while expanding vertically requires the domestication of new plants and animals. If a civilization started in Central America, for example, there would be